The brands you think signal wealth? The wealthy stopped wearing them years ago. That logo you saved up for. The one you thought would finally make you look like you made it. It's doing the opposite. It's telling everyone you're still trying. Right now, 10 luxury names have quietly become the uniform of people who want to look rich, but aren't. The same pieces that once meant status now scream desperation. And the worst part? Most people have no idea they're wearing a red flag. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which brands to avoid and why the people with real money already have. Number 10. Michael Kors. There was a time when Michael Kors was the name you reached for when you wanted accessible luxury without looking like you were cutting corners. The gold MK emblem, the glossy totes, the jet-set aesthetic. It all felt aspirational, polished, and just exclusive enough to feel like a win. Then, the brand made a fatal mistake. It grew too fast, spread too wide, and became impossible to avoid. By 2025, Michael Kors had become synonymous with outlet malls and clearance racks. Parent company Capri Holdings reported a 25% revenue drop compared to just 5 years earlier. The brand's operating margins collapsed. Store closures followed. Management admitted they had raised prices too aggressively, while simultaneously flooding discounts into the market. That contradiction destroyed whatever prestige remained. Walk into any department store today and you'll find racks of MK bags with red tags hanging like surrender flags. The once coveted logo now reads as starter luxury at best. High net worth buyers have long since moved on to brands with cleaner identities and less baggage. Polène, Mansour Gavriel. Names that feel curated rather than mass-produced. The numbers tell a brutal story. Capri Holdings posted a net loss of $1.2 billion for fiscal 2025. The company announced plans to shrink Michael Kors's store fleet from 750 locations to 650. 150 stores are scheduled for renovation in a desperate attempt to elevate the full price experience. But renovating stores doesn't renovate perception. The damage runs deeper than fixtures and lighting. The irony is brutal. Michael Kors built its empire on making luxury feel attainable. But when luxury becomes too attainable, it stops being luxury at all. And now, the very people who made the brand a household name have quietly disappeared from its customer base. But while Michael Kors drowned in overexposure, the next brand on this list tried a different approach. It attempted to reinvent itself while clinging to an identity that no longer resonates with modern buyers. Number 9. Coach Monogram. Line's Coach has a complicated story. The brand has genuinely improved its craftsmanship in recent years. The leather quality is better. The tabby bag became a genuine hit. Younger shoppers started paying attention again. But here's the problem. Those old monogram pieces, the ones covered in repeating C logos, still haunt the brand's image. For a generation of shoppers, Coach means exactly one thing. The monogram bags their mothers carried in the early 2000s. That association is hard to shake. Even as Coach's parent company Tapestry reported 11% revenue growth in 2025, driven by the flagship brand, the growth came almost entirely from cleaner, logo-free designs. The monogram styles sit unsold, while minimalist leather pieces fly off shelves. The market has spoken clearly. Buyers want subtle craftsmanship, not repetitive patterns. Brands like Polène and Esther Ekmi have captured the audience Coach once owned by offering exactly what those old monogram lines cannot deliver. Understated elegance without visual noise. Coach's challenge is that it's carrying two identities at once. One is modern, refined, and genuinely competitive. The other is dated, loud, and impossible to recommend without hesitation. Until the brand fully commits to burying the monogram era, it will remain stuck between two worlds. And in luxury, indecision is just another word for irrelevance. Coach struggled to escape its past. Pandora faces a different problem entirely. Its rise and fall were tied to a trend that simply could not survive. Number 8. Pandora Jewelry. Pandora was everywhere in the 2010s. The charm bracelet craze turned the Danish brand into a global phenomenon. Every birthday, every graduation, every holiday meant another charm added to the collection. It felt personal, customizable, and just expensive enough to feel like a gift worth giving. But trends have expiration dates, and charm bracelets hit theirs hard. By 2024, Pandora was facing a brutal reality. Search interest for bracelets dropped sharply, while the brand scrambled to pivot toward rings and lab-grown diamonds. Sales in Europe declined. The UK market fell 9%. France and Italy followed. The Chinese market, once responsible for nearly 10% of revenue, collapsed to just 1% as local competitors flooded the space with cheaper alternatives. Pandora's core problem is positioning. It sits awkwardly between fashion jewelry and fine jewelry, belonging fully to neither category. The charm bracelet aesthetic now reads as dated, a relic of a specific cultural moment that has passed. Meanwhile, brands like Majurai and Misoma captured the minimalist gold jewelry trend that replaced it. The company has announced plans to close up to 100 stores in China, accelerating its retreat from a market that once represented massive growth potential. Core charm and bracelet products still account for 75% of revenue, but that category showed only 1% growth. The future, if there is one, lies in lab-grown diamonds and what the company calls its fuel with more segment. But pivoting away from your signature product is risky when that product still pays most of the bills. The company is trying to reinvent itself with celebrity ambassadors and new collections. But reinvention requires more than marketing. It requires a product that people actually want. And right now, Pandora's signature offering feels like a time capsule from a different era. Pandora shows what happens when a trend collapses. Guess shows what happens when a brand lets its identity fade until nothing is left to hold on to. Number 7. Guess. Guess was the brand that defined 90s cool. The iconic triangle logo, the supermodel campaigns, the European-inspired denim that made American teenagers feel sophisticated. For a moment, Guess was the name you wore when you wanted to signal that you understood fashion. That moment ended a long time ago. Today, Guess operates primarily as an outlet brand. The company reported a 70% drop in net earnings for fiscal 2025. Operating margins in Americas, retail collapsed from 8% to just 1%. Store closures accelerated. Traffic declined. The brand announced it would close 20 underperforming locations across the United States alone. The fundamental problem is positioning. Guess occupies an uncomfortable middle ground between fast fashion and premium labels. It's too expensive to compete with Zara and H&M, but lacks the cachet to justify its prices against contemporary brands with stronger identities. The logo that once signaled aspiration now signals clearance rack. Wealthy shoppers abandoned Guess years ago. What remains is a loyal but shrinking customer base that still associates the brand with nostalgia rather than current relevance. The company is attempting to reposition through acquisitions like Rag and Bone, but brand perception takes decades to rebuild. And in today's market, Guess simply doesn't have that kind of time. Guess drifted into nostalgia. Armani Exchange did something worse. It sold its exclusivity piece by piece until the logo meant nothing at all. Number 6. Armani Exchange. There was a time when the AX logo carried weight. Armani Exchange represented the accessible entry point into the Giorgio Armani universe. It was the brand you wore when you couldn't afford the main line, but still wanted a taste of Italian luxury. The logo on your chest said you understood the hierarchy. Now it says you shop at the mall. The entire Armani group reported a 5% revenue decline in 2024, with operating profit dropping 24%. But the real damage has been to perception rather than balance sheets. Armani Exchange became too available, too promotional and too disconnected from the quiet sophistication that made the Armani name valuable in the first place. Walk through any shopping center, and you'll find an Armani exchange store positioned between mid-tier retailers, running sales that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. The logo that once whispered Italian elegance now blends into the noise of fast fashion and trend-chasing basics. Meanwhile, buyers seeking elevated basics have migrated to brands that never compromised their positioning. AMI Paris offers the casual luxury that Armani Exchange once promised. Represent delivers streetwear with genuine cultural relevance. These names feel intentional. Armani Exchange feels like an afterthought. The lesson is clear. Diffusion lines work only when they maintain distance from the mass market. The moment that distance collapses, so does the value proposition. And Armani Exchange collapsed a long time ago. Armani Exchange collapsed under overexposure. Dolce & Gabbana stumbled for the opposite reason. It clung to loud luxury long after the world turned down the volume. If you're enjoying the breakdown, here's a quick reminder to subscribe if you haven't yet. Number 5. Dolce & Gabbana logo pieces. Dolce & Gabbana built an empire on maximalism, the bold prints, the Baroque flourishes, the unapologetic Italian glamour that felt like a celebration of excess. For decades, that aesthetic dominated red carpets and fashion magazines. It was the visual language of wealth that didn't whisper. But the world changed, and Dolce & Gabbana didn't change with it. The brand's fashion and home division reported an 8% decline in fiscal 2025. The net loss widened from 14 million euros to 117 million. Sales in Europe contracted. China remained a disaster after years of controversy and cultural missteps. The logo-heavy pieces that once defined the brand now sit on shelves while competitors selling quiet luxury dominate the conversation. The problem isn't quality. Dolce & Gabbana still produces beautifully crafted clothing. The problem is relevance. Today's luxury buyer doesn't want to announce their wealth through Baroque prints and oversized logos. They want sophistication that speaks through cut, fabric, and restraint. Loro Piana delivers that. The Row delivers that. Brunello Cucinelli delivers that. Dolce & Gabbana delivers the opposite. The financial strain extends beyond sales figures. The company's net financial position turned negative by 453 million euros, up from negative 167 million the previous year. Dolce & Gabbana has been forced to seek additional financing, postponing loan maturities, and scrambling to stabilize a balance sheet that reflects years of misalignment between product and market demand. When a heritage house starts restructuring debt, the problems have moved far beyond creative direction. The brand is attempting to pivot toward beauty products, which grew 30% last year. But that growth can't mask the fundamental disconnect between what Dolce & Gabbana sells and what the modern luxury consumer actually wants. Dolce & Gabbana's maximalism once felt aspirational. Now it feels exhausting. And the buyers who can afford to be exhausted by fashion have simply moved on. Dolce & Gabbana felt overwhelming. Versace took that intensity and amplified it, only to discover that the market had no patience left for theatrics. Number 4. Versace Baroque lines. Versace was never subtle. The Medusa logo, the gold chains, the Baroque prints that screamed wealth from across the room. Under Gianni Versace, that aesthetic was revolutionary. It defined an era. It made luxury feel dangerous and alive. Under Capri Holdings, it became a liability. In 2025, Prada acquired Versace for $1.38 billion. That sounds like a lot, until you realize Capri paid $2.1 billion for the brand just 7 years earlier. The sale represented a $700 million loss. Revenue had declined over 20% in a single year. The Baroque aesthetic that once defined the brand had become impossible to sell. The luxury market shifted toward minimalism and quiet sophistication. Versace's signature prints started looking dated rather than daring. The gold Medusa that once commanded attention began signaling a very specific kind of customer, someone more interested in being seen than in being stylish. Wealthy buyers migrated towards Saint Laurent's sharp tailoring and Bottega Veneta's understated woven leather. These brands offered prestige without performance. Versace offered the opposite. And in a market that increasingly values discretion, that's a fatal positioning. The transition hasn't been smooth. Donatella Versace stepped down as creative director after nearly 3 decades of family leadership. For the first time since 1978, a Versace collection won't be shaped by the founding family. Prada has installed its own designer, Dario Vitale, to lead the creative vision forward. It's a complete reset for a house that built its identity on family control and unapologetic glamour. Whether that identity can survive the surgery remains an open question. Prada believes it can rehabilitate the brand by reconnecting Versace with its artisan roots. Maybe they can. But the Baroque era is over. And those gold-printed pieces hanging in closets around the world have become reminders of a fashion moment that burned too bright and too fast. Versace's fall was dramatic. Balenciaga's was catastrophic, triggered not by taste, but by something far more damaging. Number 3. Balenciaga sneakers and streetwear. Balenciaga was untouchable. The Triple S sneaker redefined luxury footwear. The speed trainer became a cultural phenomenon. Under Demna, the brand mastered the art of controlled controversy, turning trash bags and destroyed sneakers into objects of desire. Balenciaga wasn't just selling clothes, it was selling cultural relevance. Then came November 2022. The ad campaigns featuring children with bondage-themed accessories triggered a global backlash that extended far beyond fashion. Celebrities distanced themselves. Customers demanded refunds. Stores that had been packed went silent. Balenciaga fell from number 4 on List's hottest brands ranking to number 18 in a single quarter. Parent company Kering reported that sales suffered specifically because of the controversy. The brand has attempted to recover. Shows in Los Angeles, celebrity appearances, new collections that dial back the provocation. But sales associates report that the Adidas collaboration merchandise remains nearly impossible to move, even at outlet prices. The association with that campaign lingers in ways that no marketing budget can erase. Luxury buyers seeking streetwear aesthetics have migrated toward Loewe, whose creative direction feels fresh without feeling reckless. They've moved toward minimalist sneakers that don't carry baggage. Balenciaga still has fans, but the effortless cool that once defined the brand has been replaced by something far more complicated. The lesson is clear. Controversy can build a brand, but the wrong kind of controversy can destroy one. And Balenciaga is still learning how deep that destruction goes. Balenciaga collapsed quickly. Burberry unraveled slowly, undone by a symbol the world loved too much. Number 2. Burberry check everything. The Burberry check was once untouchable. That camel, black, red, and white pattern represented the pinnacle of British heritage. It lined trench coats that defined a certain kind of understated wealth. Owning Burberry meant you understood tradition without needing to explain it. Then the pattern became ubiquitous, and ubiquity killed it. Burberry's brand value declined 12% in 2025, falling to $4 billion from $4.6 billion the previous year. Revenue dropped 15%. The company posted its first operating loss in recent memory. 1,700 jobs were cut. The check pattern that once signified exclusivity had become so widely counterfeited and imitated that it lost all meaning. The brand is now attempting a dramatic reset under CEO Joshua Schulman. The strategy, called Burberry Forward, aims to reconnect with heritage while abandoning the trend, chasing that diluted the brand's identity. But that reset faces a brutal reality. An entire generation associates Burberry with knockoffs rather than craftsmanship. Wealthy buyers seeking heritage pieces have migrated toward Acne Studios and Maison Margiela. These brands offer the muted sophistication that Burberry once owned, but surrendered through overexposure. The check pattern still exists, but it no longer commands the respect it once did. Burberry's story is a warning about what happens when a brand loses control of its own image. The most recognizable pattern in fashion became the most overexposed, and recovering from that kind of dilution takes more than a strategy deck. It takes decades. Burberry showed how overexposure can ruin a pattern. Louis Vuitton proved the same principle on a global scale. Number 1. Louis Vuitton Monogram Canvas. If there's one pattern that defined luxury for generations, it's the Louis Vuitton monogram. Those interlocking L's and V's weren't just a logo, they were a statement. Owning Louis Vuitton meant you had arrived. The Speedy, the Neverfull, the Keep All. These weren't just bags, they were trophies, but something shifted. The same monogram that once represented the pinnacle of aspiration has become the uniform of aspiration itself. And for the people who've already arrived? That's exactly the problem. LVMH's fashion and leather goods division saw sales fall 5% in the first quarter of 2025, missing analyst expectations by a significant margin. The company's overall revenue declined 3%. For the first time, Hermès overtook LVMH as the world's most valuable luxury company by market capitalization. The symbolic weight of that shift cannot be overstated. The Louis Vuitton monogram is everywhere. Every airport, every shopping mall, every influencer's Instagram feed. That visibility, once a sign of dominance, has become a liability. When a logo appears on everyone, it stops meaning anything to anyone. High net worth buyers have quietly migrated toward brands that still require effort to acquire. Goyard, with its hand-painted chevron pattern and absence of e-commerce. Celine's Triomphe canvas, which offers similar aesthetics with less saturation. Hermès, where wait lists and purchase history requirements create artificial scarcity that Louis Vuitton abandoned long ago. The irony cuts deep. Louis Vuitton spent decades building the most recognizable luxury symbol on Earth. That success became the very thing undermining its position at the top. LVMH chairman Bernard Arnault acknowledged during earnings calls that customers have become increasingly aware of value beyond price. They want justification for what they're buying. And a monogram that appears on millions of bags worldwide doesn't provide that justification anymore. It provides the opposite, proof that exclusivity has been traded for volume. The monogram canvas still sells. It remains wildly popular with aspirational buyers around the world. But that's precisely the issue for the wealthy. Louis Vuitton has become the brand you buy before you've made it, not the brand you carry after. And for a house that spent a century representing the apex of luxury, that repositioning is devastating. Louis Vuitton didn't lose its craftsmanship, it lost its exclusivity. And in luxury, exclusivity is everything.